The state of North Dakota has rejected overwhelmingly a package of anti-landlord bills that were proposed by a congressman. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today. It's coming out of the state of North Dakota. Now, obviously, I don't talk about North Dakota a lot. It's a very small, in terms of population, state. And from what I've heard, at least, they don't have very anti-landlord laws. But a politician up there was proposing some anti-landlord rules and regulations. And fortunately, the state legislature overwhelmingly rejected them, okay? Because they're garbage. They're absolute garbage, and they're unnecessary, and they would put a huge burden, both financially and time-wise, onto landlords. So I agree with what they did, and I'm glad that, that they didn't even give this a time of day. Now, I'm going to go over what the proposed rule changes were, just in case we see this sort of thing happening in places outside of North Dakota. I could see it, it's not that far away from Nebraska. Okay, we're only a couple states away, and I could see somebody proposing garbage like that here where I live and invest. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So I'm just out of curiosity, what would you consider to be the best states to invest in the Great Plains area? I'll say, states like, Kansas, Nebraska, South and North Dakota. We could even go over to Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, parts of Illinois at least. Which state do you think is the best to invest in terms of landlord rules and regulations? Go ahead and put a comment if you know these states. I'm an investor here in Nebraska, obviously, but I would say Missouri is a very, very good state, to be a landlord. But that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, let's get into it and see what the article says. This article is coming from Inforum.com, and it says, North Dakota Senate overwhelmingly rejects trio of renters protection bills. Roughly 35% of North Dakota's households rent, and 40% of those renters are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing, according to the ACLU. Yeah, they have a lower percentage of renters than many other states, and that might be part of the reason why they are much less likely to approve this anti-landlord sort of bill. But anyway, let's see what the article says. A trio of renters protection bills in North Dakota were overwhelmingly voted down by the Senate on Tuesday. Senate Bills 2235, 2236, and 2237 aim to pass regulations on rental business practices to help prevent a snowball effect where fees can start building up, becoming unmanageable for North Dakota renters and threatening them with homelessness, according to Senator Ryan Braunberger, Democrat from Fargo, the primary sponsor of the three bills. And then it goes over the statistics again, how many people up in North Dakota are renters, and that's not really relevant. Here's my issue, okay? Like, the fees that are arranged between a landlord and a tenant, that is all discussed before the tenant even rents the property. It's not like you're just surprising them all of a sudden. No, you're telling the tenant, hey, if A, B, and C happens, you have to pay this fee, okay? So why they act like now that, oh yeah, well, the tenant didn't know and the landlord is somehow taking advantage. No, that's not happening at all. This is a contract between two parties, and this is where they agreed to meet. Okay, if you don't like paying a late fee or whatever fees that they were trying to get rid of with this legislation, then don't rent from that landlord. Pretty simple, right? There's plenty of landlords out there, small mom and pops, who don't use any sort of lease, who don't charge any sort of fees. I remember when I first moved up to Omaha, I found such a small mom and pop landlord, one who didn't do an actual background check on me and, didn't charge any fees and had a very small lease. We had a lease, but it was just like a one sheet of paper lease. It didn't really go over much. And fortunately, when my landlord rented to me, he got a really good tenant. So I never paid late. I always paid on time, and I ended up staying there for 2 full years. So, hey, he made out like a bandit. Got everything he wanted. Even when he rose the rent, I didn't complain. I was just like, okay, no problem, But that's not rare. There's a lot of small mom and pop landlords who operate in the same manner. And so it shouldn't be like, well, unless we pass this law, there's nothing that the tenant can do to get away from fees. No, it doesn't work like that. Now, do I believe in charging fees as a landlord? Absolutely. Okay? And the reason that I put fees in place is because I want to discourage bad behavior. Okay? Like a lockout fee. I don't want to be down at the tenant's place changing locks in the middle of the night, or unlocking the door in the middle of the night, because that is a waste of my time and my money. So if you do get locked out and somebody has to come and let you in, you're going to pay something. That's the way I see it. It's pretty simple. But anyway, let me continue, because they're going to go over what the law that they had proposed said. Senate Bill 2235 would have made it so payments made by renters would have been applied to rent before being applied to any outstanding late fees. This would have ended situations in which a tenant is barely able to make rent because they are required to pay late fees before they can pay for a month's rent. They end up unable to make the full payment and become late on another month's rent, creating more late fees. It received a 4-0 do not pass recommendation out of committee, with one legislator absent, not voting, and failed on the Senate floor with a vote of 40-6. So yeah, they want to make it so that, oh, well, you know what, if you pay your rent, then it'll apply fully to the rent. Listen, all that is worked out. If that's the way the landlord and the tenant agreed to it, that's fine. But if that's not the way the landlord and the tenant agreed to it, then the landlord should be able to apply that money wherever the heck they want, period. Okay? I don't want the government telling me where the money's going, government wants their hand in everything. And that makes it absolutely impossible to run your business the way that you see fit. So that's why I am 100% against too many rules, too many regulations, and too much government intervention in any sort of business. Okay? Just let people go out there and do their own thing. Senate Bill 2236 proposed to cap late fees at 8% of a total month's rent. Advocates for the bill said the cap was necessary because the current range of late fees varies widely, from a $10 initial fee on the low end to a $100 initial fee and an extra $100 every week rent is late on the high end, according to Caden Felch, a fair housing specialist with the High Plains Fair Housing Center. It received a 4-0 do not pass recommendation out of committee, with one legislator absent, not voting, and was voted down on the Senate floor 39-7. So yeah, they want to cap the late fees at 8%. So for example, if you have a $1,000 a month rental unit, your late fees would be capped at $80. And I guess that would be a month. So the landlords who are saying, hey, every single week you don't pay me, you're charged another late fee, well, you wouldn't be able to do that anymore. Or the landlord saying, hey, for that $1,000 rental, I'm going to charge you $100, you wouldn't be able to charge that anymore. Keep in mind, right, when I don't get paid the rent, do you think that the mortgage company is going to say, hey, you know what, your tenant didn't pay you, so you don't have to pay me? Do you think my insurance company is going to be like, hey, no, we know your tenant hasn't paid you yet? The mortgage company, they have penalties that they will charge me. All of my people who I have to pay are still going to expect their money. But it's okay if the tenant doesn't pay because everything falls back on me. No, absolutely not. So I don't like this sort of rule either. And as I mentioned before, this is something that you negotiated with the tenant about. Now, part of the reason you might want to do that and have these sort of fees in place is because the tenant may have a sketchy eviction history, a sketchy credit history, and you need this sort of extra fee to help discourage them from not paying you. Okay, that's the absolute truth. I always want to discourage bad behavior by putting these sort of fees in there. So rather than saying, oh, well, we're going to make the fees as low as possible so the tenant doesn't suffer, no, we're going to make the fees as high as possible so the tenant doesn't screw up. Okay? And then if the tenant is screwing up, we want to be able to get rid of them. Period. Anyway, let me go over the last proposal. Senate Bill 2237 would have empowered the Labor Commission to receive and investigate tenant complaints regarding landlord compliance with statute and to take enforcement action against landlords who were not in compliance. It received a 4-0 do not pass recommendation out of committee, with one legislator absent, not voting, and died on the Senate floor with a vote of 40-6. Yeah, that's exactly what we need. Another group that tenants can complain about how much they hate their landlord to, and make up lies and just try to hurt the landlord who is just trying to do the best with their property. Okay, so no, absolutely not. Bunch of garbage bills. They absolutely did the right thing and rejecting them. But tell me what you think in the comments down below.